the H.A.T.A.E podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the H.A.T.A.E podcast. Today I'm joined by a hairdresser this time. We are joined by Luke Robert. How are you doing, Luke?
Hi mate, how you doing? You okay?
All good. Thank you very much. As always, we like to get into things straight away on here. We don't like to muck about with all the fluff. So Luke, how did you get involved in hairdressing?
Thanks, mate. Well, yeah, it's great to be on the podcast. So yeah, my hairdressing journey started probably about 15 years ago, to be fair. So I actually started as a 14, 15-year-old sort of Saturday boys washing hair. I was a bit like yourself in the sense of my mum was a hairdresser. So initially that was my kind of intro into the industry. I got taken into work a few times with her and kind of just really liked the atmosphere. I always knew I was going to do something with my hands. You know, I'm a practical person, very creative, always liked the fashion. And yeah, I think looking at it from the outside, the hair industry is quite appealing, isn't it? When you look at it like that, and you've got, you know, if you like your fashion, if you like to dress up, if you like hair, you know, there's creativity. There's a multiple different things that work really well for it. And yeah, I just liked it, and it was one of them where probably the time I was coming through, everyone was crying out for apprentices as well. So it was an amazing position to be able to get work very easily. And as soon as I kind of went to work with my mum a few times, I realised that you couldn't get told off for talking all day. I thought it was a great, great environment for that kind of thing, and away we went really. Yeah, and it kind of just has a funny way of working out, doesn't it? Really, you don't really think after that, you don't really think much about it. I just knew that as soon as I left school, that's what I was going to do. So it was kind of all hands on deck at that point, and I couldn't wait to finish my education, I must admit. But I feel like when you know what you want to do, it also sort of streamlines you, doesn't it? And it means that you can focus. And I was very lucky in the position I've had my mum to sort of help me make decisions with stuff like that earlier on in my career. So she told me where I should be going, what I should be looking at, you know, and things like that. And I was just like full steam ahead.
Yeah. So your mum was quite encouraging about you going into the industry then.
Yeah, yeah, she was, and she probably thought it suited me as well. You know, she probably see that, you know, I don't sit still. I chat all day. I'm creative in that sense. So, you know, I can see stuff work with it, and yeah, it was probably just like a natural progression. There obviously wasn't any sort of real force into it, but it was a case of what do you want to do. And I remember at one point sitting with my parents and being like, I'd just been offered two apprenticeships, and it was a case of I was either going to be, I was going to become a chef or become a hairdresser.
Yeah.
And they were me two options because I had a part-time job at a restaurant at the same time. So it was a bit like this was my sort of career defining moment. It was kind of based on the fact that I'd done like a day release program at school, and I managed to get in hairdressing doing that. That I kind of swayed more towards the hairdressing bit really, and there you are.
Yeah. How did you find that then? Because that's quite, I mean, is I always can tell the difference when you've got people whose parents or a close
Yeah,
relative have been involved with hairdressing because you see a much wider scope before you start.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you,
You do, yeah.
you
I
don't
think
get
I
that
think
thing,
they
do you?
Yeah, there's definitely that sense of like you get more of an understanding, don't you, of what the industry is actually like, and good and bad. So you actually also get to see what what it can be like as well. Maybe what you have to be careful of and things like that. So you're a bit more open, aren't you, to the full picture. You're not quite so naive to just going in and thinking you can get all the way to the top in week one. Yeah, it was like massive. I mean, my mum's been a massive support. My parents are they were always going to support anything I do. My kind of working class background is very much like you do something, you do it to the best of your ability, and you work hard, and you'll always climb the ladder that way, because you can't not if you're consistent. And so there's always been that, but particularly with having mum's support of obviously knowing the industry, you just sit in that position where yeah, probably it's helped me in scenarios, where I maybe wouldn't have known as much, and talking to different bosses, trying to climb the ladder, trying to get into different parts of the industry. It's helped in all of those different fields, really. But I mean, she's been nothing but supportive, so I can't, I don't take that lightly. I'm very grateful for that, to be honest. And then, yeah, it kind of works out, doesn't it, really?
Yeah,
It's a funny
exactly.
one, really.
And
Yeah.
that's it. How did you find the day release from school? Because it wasn't something that was available up when I was I'm probably a couple of years older than you, but not by too much, of course. But it's
Yeah.
the when I was at school that wasn't really a thing. So did you find that quite helpful in sort of like you say, obviously helped you decide, right, I'm gonna go into
Yeah.
hairdressing rather than the the hospitality chef industry. Did you find that sort of helped in sort of really making your mind up and giving you a little bit of a head start?
Yeah, it definitely did. I mean, it was about 15, maybe 16 years ago that would have been roughly. But it was at the position where in the UK, the government were obviously putting a lot of money to the apprenticeship scheme. So that must have been how that funneled down to like a college scheme. So it was effectively when you take your GCSEs, you got rather than doing two GCSEs, you could do like a link up with the college, and they did like nursery care, hairdressing, they did like catering for chefs. There was like engineering, mechanics, all the kind of what you class as fundamental skills outside of the school environment, really.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it was massive because you think 14 years old, you're working in a salon 1 day a week. So you basically learn everything that you learn as an apprentice in those early years. And it was like for that point. And that was part of the thing. I never worked with my mum until I must have been about 18, 19 when we opened the shop together. That was the first time. So before then, I'd never worked in a shop with her. She'd always worked, she'd managed and run other salons, but she always kind of said, go off and experience it, without me, so that it was a bit more real. And I did that with my day release and my placement and stuff like that. And yeah, it was very much, you just learn, don't you? You learn everything. I went in at, what was I, 15, when I was 15, 16, whatever it was, when I left school and actually went straight into my apprenticeship. I knew all of the run-ins of a salon. I knew everything that you needed to know as an apprentice. So you walk in on day one and you're like, well, I just want to train now, don't I? I just want to learn the hair. So in that sense, it was mega, like mega, because it gave you the exposure into the industry, but also a bit of a heads up in training as well, because you could walk straight in and answer any phone. You can, greet a client, you can take a bill, you can shampoo people's hair, all of the things that take you weeks and weeks, and at the beginning, you're
yeah.
like, wait, let's crack on. So
Yeah, that's good, isn't it? It's a great way of doing things. Like you say, it gives you that real world exposure to the industry, doesn't it? And like you say, I'm assuming was that level one you qualified in, was that? Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
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 yeah, level MVQ level 1, yeah.
yeah. So that to America, level two is the equivalent of passing cosmetology school for people in the US. So level one is the first half of the level two. So
Yeah,
was
that's right.
that then what you did there? Was did you stay in that same salon when you then left school and went on to?
No, from that. That was just like a local salon that I could kind of walk to as such.
Yeah,
And then obviously with the help of obviously my mum in the sense of knowing local salons and chains, it was a case of, right, you got to basically go to the best chain outside of London, really, where we were living in Oxfordshire. So I managed to get a couple of different apprenticeship offers and kind of took the best one, really,
yeah,
and ended up working in a local chain in Berkshire, Oxfordshire. They had about five, six salons, but ended up working there for a few years and being able to like really crack on with training and getting really getting the journey kind of on track and starting. And yeah, it helped massively because obviously I think by 17, I think it was, I was cutting floor on the shop floor, cutting hair on the shop floor,
yeah,
which is great, isn't it? I mean, part of my journey that I'm sure we'll talk about, but kind of quite early on, I knew that I didn't really want to do color.
yeah,
So that was like a personal choice. Of course, from your training aspect, you do everything right, and you do all the courses and you do everything, you get qualified, and also went on a lot of other color and stuff. But it was just one of them where I was like, I just don't have the spark for it. I really just really enjoyed and got into cutting hair, and that was my thing. So by sort of 17, I was on the shop floor cutting hair, and that was that really.
yeah. Absolutely. Well, you think about it, then at that point you're 3 years in.
Mm,
Giving your
yeah,
start at school there. So 3 years in, if you're 16, you're 19. So you had a
yeah.
bit of a head start there. And with that, with the training there, did you do that as a sort of a day release from college, or did you do that all within the salon?
No, yeah, it was all within the salon at that point. So it was like an apprenticeship scheme that was run, and the salon I was at had a training academy as part of the salon because they had five different salons,
Yeah,
and one of them turned into a training school. So you went there once a week, and they obviously had the appropriate people in-house to be able to sign the correct documents. So I believe must have had an AQA assessor or something like that. So but yeah, no, I mean that was brilliant. It worked really well as well, to be honest, because you're getting far more hands-on experience. You're working, all your models are clients basically, they're getting their hair done on the cheap. You're constantly within that real salon environment so that you don't lose that touch of it. Because I think the one drawback sometimes to the college courses opposed to apprenticeship are of course the like the falsified environment where it is so kind of like fake in that sense. You know, it's not. It might be your mum or your gran that's coming in every time to get their haircut, and there's no element of transactional work happening. And obviously, it's within a classroom, maybe within a school or a college. It's just not quite the same, is it, as looked at as a business? It's very much just from a training perspective. So I would always, even now with my experience, lean towards apprenticeships because I just don't think you can beat the in salon. It's like it's all like the corridor chat, isn't it? It's the everything that happens within the business, not even that happens just on the shop floor. You know, it's building your social skills, it's building your confidence, it's meeting people, it's all this kind of thing. You can really see now when apprentices come through, and I notice it even now more so. You see them kind of come out of their shell, don't you? After the first 6 months. You think, oh, you come in almost as a kid, and rightly so, because it's probably the age they start their apprenticeship at, but then they're almost going onto the shop floor and you're like a completely different person, aren't you? Because you can see how much you've grown. And I think you can't buy that or replicate that, can you, without experience of being in the business and being in a salon and in that way also earning your stripes. Like, look, we've all cleaned skirting boards, we've all done product shelves, or we felt like we clean a product shelf every day of the week. But it's part of that, isn't it? It's a bit like Karate Kid, wax on, wax off, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
the sort of it's discipline. It's you can't of not any industry can you just jump in and go straight to the top. Like, it's not realistic, is it? You've got to earn your stripes. You've got to practice. Like, I couldn't even to now, mate. I couldn't tell you the amount of hours I've invested in education and training and money, and like it's a never ending cycle, and so it should be. You don't ever get, in my opinion, you don't ever get to the level like almost you want to be at, do you? Because when you get there, you're chasing the next bit. It's like that constant. And I think when you lose that, you probably ultimately lose your spark, don't you? And that's maybe when you do hang up the scissors and then do something else.
yeah. No, absolutely, absolutely. So, how long did you work at that salon for then? So, you worked for that small local chain of salons. How long were
Yeah,
you there
so the
before you branched off?
So it must have been about 3 years, I think. It must have been because I think I went on about three Christmas dues, so it would have been something like that,
Yeah,
which is great when you're in a salon of such size, isn't it?
yeah,
It's I think yeah, I think it must have been. So I'd been about 18 or so when I left and went out on my own as such. It must have been 18, 19, something like that. No, I think it must have been 19. Yeah, I'd have been 19 years old. And what happened then is that was the position where my mum was like she was going to take a punt and open a salon, basically. And that had been the first time she would have done that, like previously, or having just run other people's salons for them as such. So that was it really, and it kind of worked out in a way of like non-intention, really, because I was never planning on working with her alongside her until a lot later down the line. The plan that we'd spoken about and the plan we had together was I was going to work for a big chain and work for them for a number, 5, 10 years, really, really learn, grow, get to a point, and then naturally probably break off because I want to do my own thing. And mum shut up the salon, but it was just a unfortunate circumstances of staff that she couldn't get. And she was a bit like, look, I really need you. Like, doesn't make sense now. We're really struggling for staff, and you're sat there working for someone else. And it was a bit like, yeah, cool. So at the time, I kind of was a bit like, oh, it was one of them where I was working. I got to a good position in a salon quite quickly, but I look back and that was probably the making of me to where I am today, to be honest. Like and look, no one's going to put you first more so than anyone else, and your mum are there at the end of the day. And
yeah,
I will be forever grateful for that because you will. I didn't look back, and the investment and the time, and I kind of just went on leaps and bounds from that point, from about 19 years old, because realistically, we had a small village salon that grew and grew and grew, but I, as soon as I got brought in, it was basically to run the shop. To be honest, it was
yeah,
it was let me run this shop with you, and probably little did I know right at the beginning, because I was just trying to get the place busy and successful, that actually that was the point, and that was the handing over the reins and going along with it, and yeah, and it was great. So come to that about 2.5 years into that. I think it was. So roughly, I was roughly coming on about 21, and mum kind of said like, look, I don't really want to do it anymore. Like, I just wasn't. I could tell that maybe she just wasn't. it wasn't what she wanted. Her heart wasn't in it, but in the
Yeah,
sense of she was happy to just support me. And I was at that point now where my skills had developed greatly. We'd started to build a really good team, and what happened was round the corner on the main high street, a unit became available, and I just wandered round there and spoke to the landlord, and it was a bit like, cool, I'm going to take it. So I felt like at that point we had like a what was it, 4 or 5 chairs little village salon at the time, and then we
yeah,
moved on to the main high street in the village, and it was like, yeah, great, this shop's twice the size, we can proper go for it. It was like a changing moment of like you are visible by the whole like area being out there, so it was a real moment of like if you move to there, it's probably one of the best shops you can get in that area, and that was it. And then I signed on the lease and just thought, oh, let's just take a crack at it, basically.
yeah,
And basically took at that point, then I was 21, and I'd always said to myself, like at 21, I wanted to have my own salon. And I said that when I was about 14. So it's funny how things kind of work out, isn't it,
yeah.
really,
The,
when
the
I first
grand
started.
age of
I don't,
21. Yeah,
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 don't ask me why. I don't know where 21 come from. I
yeah,
just always thought like, that would have been great. It would have been a great achievement. And it kind of just happened really. And then I decided to, then we just went full steam ahead with that. So I took on all the team that she had, see, and we basically just moved. I started Luke Robert Hair, so that was when that was formed, and then took all the girls on that we had, and yeah, all the clients, and just like went for it. So ended up having a good time of having the shop, really, to be fair. And that was kind of that. And when I look at that point, that was probably like a real momentous moment that at the time you're like you're buzzing because you got a nice new salon that's great, but at the time you're just thinking I don't know, it's how the mind works sometimes, isn't it, because you're just thinking of the next thing. And when I
yeah.
look back now, at that time, I probably never at all reflected and thought this is like absolutely amazing. I just thought, great, yeah, let's crack on.
Yeah,
It's like that
exactly.
mindset, isn't it?
You never sort of stop to look at the flowers, do you? Is always something new, always
Yeah,
something else coming. How did you find that transition? Because obviously there you're working there in the salon with your mum, and you're
yeah.
sort of running the shop alongside your mum and whatnot else. So how did you find that transition then to sort of moving from just being you turn up, you cut hair, you do your work,
Yeah.
great, lovely. How did you find that transition into becoming from the hairdresser to the salon owner and hairdresser?
Yeah, like quite natural, really. Because again, like I suppose when we talk about reflection, I was probably getting prepped and taken on more than what I realized at the time. Because I kind of just took it in the stride, really, and thought, well, this is part of it. I've always been like incredibly proactive in that sense. So I've always tried to help. I've always tried to go the extra mile with certain things. And if you roll it back to when I was working at the big chain salon that I was doing, that I initially qualified at, it was one of them where, I used to stay behind 1 or 2 nights every week outside of my training program and make my boss stay with me and do at least 1 or 2 haircuts every night just to get better. I was at the point where I was like, everything needs to be raised. It's just that constant, like, I don't know, that level of OCD, I'm sure it is, but where you're aware of everything going on around you, innit? And it was never like customer service was the most important thing. So when you look back on it and think the position you was in at the time, I probably being an apprentice, junior stylist, whatever you want to call it, I was probably doing a lot more than what that position actually entailed, but didn't realize because actually the rest of the team probably chucked me stuff and relied on me, and you just got on with it, don't you? Because it's like your day. That's
Yeah,
what you do. You want every single person that walked through that shop. I wanted them to, be welcome, be happy, like, and all that kind of thing. And when you're not cutting hair initially, you can do that, can't you? Because you have time.
yeah,
You can effectively become a front of house alongside the receptionist and things like that. So probably like naturally, mate, it just kind of happened really. I just sort of, I have a really good relationship with my mum, and when we were at work, that kind of just enhanced really. So we spoke about everything. We just developed everything. It was always yeah, it was like nothing. There was nothing off the cards. She straight up tells me if she think I've said something out of place, if I've been too harsh with one of the girls, if I've said, and I'm like,
yeah,
look, I need to know these things because that's how I improve and that's how I grow, in it. So we kind of just ran it as we did, and she just took more and more of a back seat. And particularly when we moved to the bigger salon, where I really like everything was in my name and everything took on, she very much just became like a real back pusher for me in the sense of running my books, helping me with the wordings, the emails, the all the stuff that wasn't face shop value of, because I was very much in the shop every day, training all the girls, making sure that everything that left that shop was great. The shop was clean, like proper like salon ownership. But obviously, at the time, it's hard because you can't do everything, can you? And,
No.
and and that's where, and maybe where you can't afford to have all the staff, all the investment we had either came in stylists or apprentices. So we always needed someone to pick up the slack of the missed phone calls, the bookings, the online stuff, the emails, the marketing campaigns. So
Yeah.
she's always been a great support in that sense, and kind of just took on those roles really, and just oversaw everything that was happening. And like I said, I think organically, like probably as I was growing up and becoming even more and more experienced and mature, you just sort of settle into your roles, don't you, really? And I've always been really, really training focused and really been like, look, you owe it to yourself to constantly develop yourself as a person, in life, but also within your career. If you're going to do something, you do it to 100%. What's the point in half-assing something? I've always been like that. Like, I'd rather not do something. What's the point? What's the point in doing something if you're not going to do it
Yeah.
properly and put your full time and investment in? So, and training was like that, and we just kind of we pushed. I trained all of the team, but not only at the same time, I was training myself. And I was going off to London. I was going to all these places and getting mentorships from all these different people because I knew at 21 years old, I did not know everything and I was nowhere near good enough where I needed to be. Even though it was great in that environment, it wasn't where I wanted to be. And it's just that constant like revolving door, isn't it, mate, to be honest?
Yeah.
And yeah, you look back on it and you look back on it and reflect now, which you don't often do, but you reflect now and probably think, yeah, that actually was pretty amazing, to be fair. Like when I look what we went through and what we achieved, like great. Like it was, you'll always remember that, won't you? And you'll always look at that as a great success. Unfortunately, the back end of having the salon was obviously the COVID era, and what came with that, as everyone knows, it just put a massive financial drain on
Yeah.
the business. What all these extra expenditures, and I lost half my team because they didn't all come back from that just because of what not wanting to do hair anymore. All
Yeah.
this sort of thing. Like what happened to loads of injuries by all accounts at the time, we didn't know that, but loads of people had career changes, didn't they? And didn't
Yeah.
and it was kind of that really, and it naturally, I suppose, at that point, came to a close purely because of the financial cost in the UK. I mean, as everyone's aware right now on the recording of this podcast, the UK is not in a great state financially, and they're
Yeah.
not supporting small businesses at the minute. It doesn't matter how you want to glorify it up, they're just not.
Yeah.
Having a small independent shop of any degree, of any level, any service, regardless, in the UK at the minute is so expensive
Yeah.
that I'd take my hat off to anyone, trying to do it and achieve it because it is, your margins are so slim, so slim, and it's one of them, isn't it, mate? And naturally it
Certainly.
came to a close, but I don't regret a single thing, and it was amazing whilst it lasted, but it probably very naturally came to a close at the right time as well in my own career. So I mean, the latter part, the point we haven't covered within that is we basically ended up in the last year and a half of having the salon. I actually partnered up with the Seiko group. So the kind of part of my personal development and where we
Yeah.
were going with that.
How
I
did
I
that
actually
how
go on,
how
mate.
did that
Sorry.
partnership work? Then with Sega, like you say, you
Uh,
you partnered up with Sega. How did that work? Was it like a franchise, or was it sort of an
yeah,
affiliate program, or how did it work?
yeah, it was kind of like yeah, it wasn't a franchise. I mean, it was more of like a partnership salon. Effectively, what I gave them was like the rights of the salon name.
Okay.
So the way in which they did do franchises at the time, but I obviously didn't want to hand over the salon because it was mine, and I didn't see the necessarily the benefits of all of a sudden paying someone, all the shares of what you have over nothing. So we came to the agreement really, um, of kind of like a partnership salon where I became a Seiko studio, and that's what we were called. So I was the only Seiko studio outside of London. And
Yeah.
that was my big USP that I could then take that on board. I was already working with the product side of the Seiko hair care, which is where we kind of initially got introduced and worked together. And then yeah, it was kind of like that really. So we traded as a Seiko salon, all the branding and all the marketing. Of course, you can then get all of the imagery and all the shoots, and you get all of that for not having to sign the salon away effectively. They get to promote having another location, which was along the River Thames where we were. So really affluent area, nice place, and that kind of thing, really. But it kind of coincided with my like educational journey that I was on at the time. And if we sort of backspin that a little bit, I suppose that we spoke before, didn't we, about Richard, and he was obviously at the
Yeah,
time the international art director of Seiko, and that was my attraction to working with Seiko. I wanted to learn from Richard, and that was something I sorted out personally and sought after, and it was a case of what I did initially was he was training me to be able to teach the Seiko program. At the same time, I was running Luke Robert Hare along the side, and we kind of got a year into me going up to London every week, and it was a bit like how do you feel about coming on board with Seiko? And it was just like a natural, yeah, right. Like, what does it mean? And then we had to chats and worked out what it would mean and, what it would cost and so on and so forth and what it actually meant. And then it was like, okay, well, look, I'm well in, aren't I? Because I'm coming up to London every week. I'm training. I'm working the Seiko way. I was teaching the Seiko way. I basically became his assistant for a couple of years. And it kind of just like fitted like hand in glove, didn't it, really? So perfect. It kind of worked really well. But yeah, no, that was probably how that organically kind of happened. And he's an amazing hairdresser. At the end of the
yeah,
day, that was why I was attracted to him at the time. I thought, when I was looking for my next mentor, I thought he was probably the best haircutter for me in the UK. So
yeah.
that
He's
was
he's the
where I
best hair
went.
cutter I've seen close up.
Yeah,
By a
yeah,
long chalk.
yeah,
It's exceptional work that Richard was doing at Seiko. Is it Sassoon's
and
now? But is it
yeah,
sort of
that's right.
with that with your sort of training there? Roll it back a little bit. Was that your first introduction to sort of becoming an educator, becoming a trainer? Was that with your staff, or had you sort of been around that
No,
area before?
yeah, so pretty much from like so basically as soon as so when I was working at the chain, originally when I did my apprenticeship, that chain that I was back in Berkshire, so they used to do a lot of hair shows like Salon International and stuff like that. So I was basically their assistant. So that was my exposure to the things like the Fellowship for British Hairdressing and Salon International. So I used to go as their assistant for things like that. And then your big eyes open, don't they, to the world of the hair industry outside of the salon. So when I went on my own, because I was then obviously working for myself at sort of like, 18, 19, whatever it was, I had no links because I wasn't at the big shop anymore. So what I had to do is re-establish them links. So I did to the point of, so I joined the fellowship, and was on some of their young program teams, and because that was a great link into London and into the network. And of course, what we have in my whole age of being a hairdresser is social media, of course. So what I basically did was I used to message out all the time to all of the top hairdressers, or who I thought were the top hairdressers at the time, and just sent all of the messages in their DMs, just bombarding them like, this is hi, this is who I am. I'd love to come and assist you. Basically, can I come and assist you on a day in a salon, on a shoot, on a show, on a what, whoever it was? They were all different. They were like fashion week people, haircutters,
Yeah,
co- colorist because I didn't want to rule out at that time. I wasn't doing loads of color. I was doing color, but in the salon. But it was kind of like, well, if I go and assist some of these great, um, colorists, I'll certainly know if I want to do it. And some of them that I went and did a few days assisting with were amazing, lovely people, brilliant at what they do. But I was like, yeah, I don't want to do it.
yeah,
It was like the final thing. But look, you did it because you wanted to check, and I did
yeah.
some
You
stuff with
found
Jack.
out, didn't you?
Yeah, and I worked with some great like colorists even just for a couple of days at a stint, and it kind of amazed me really actually how little that some of these big named hairdressers actually don't get offered assistances by people. I thought their inboxes would be bombarded with people offering themselves for free because it's a free way to learn, isn't it? Basically,
Yeah,
passing someone's comb up or setting up a classroom or and so on and so forth. So yeah, I just did that. I mean, for anyone that does listen, I'd recommend that to anyone to get yourself into the links. But the thing you have to be aware for is probably only about 10% of them will ever get back to you. Of course they will, but that's just
yeah,
part of it, isn't it?
yeah,
The 10% it did gave me great opportunity, and here we are today. But the first person I actually, so at the bit, if you roll back to when I first went out on my own, the biggest investment was obviously education because it was like, right now I'm not getting the support of a big brand. I need to basically invest in my own education and try and assist as many people for free. So that's just constantly what I did. So every Sunday and Monday on my 2 days off, I used to just be in London, working with someone, assisting someone, doing anything I could, fashion weeks, men's fashion weeks, education, seminars, Salon International, fellowship events, creative head things, like literally whatever was going on, I tried to just get there, learn bits, and see who I could put myself in front of. And I managed to through someone else that did a bit of education with us. I actually ended up getting put in front of JB Mazzella, who's the owner of Mazzella and Palmer.
Yeah.
So at the top, it's now Mazzella and Partners, obviously, but it was Mazzella and Palmer at the time, and he was in Fitzrovia in London. So I actually managed to get in front of him at an event, and I basically offered my services to him and just said, look, he looked like I just thought he was amazing. I thought, look, how could I get in front of him? I couldn't afford to go on his courses, and pay the money every week. So it was like, well, offered his assistance. Like, how about? He said, why don't you come up? Come and assist us on the course. Like we're running one in 2 weeks. Come and assist us, and we'll see how it goes from there. And lo and behold, it kind of just developed from that point. So he was the first one that really took me under his wing, really, and
Yeah.
was like, and became a proper mentor to me. And I was only speaking to him yesterday, actually. So it shows you, how the sort of mentorship sort of developed. But I just used to go up there every week because they were so good and so busy. They were running courses pretty much every it was like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. They'd do a 3-day course basically every week, and they always international students. Like their reach was mega, mega, mega. But I just used to go up and be the assistant really, and I think because I'd turn up for free and I probably did it every week. And you look back on it, it was probably a great help, and he was kind of keep coming again. But obviously, as an exchange for that, he took me under his wing, gave me a lot of advice, and trained me up. So I obviously got education as a thank you and as a this is what we can do. And I did that basically until COVID, mate. So it was a good couple of years I did
Yeah.
that for because and it was every weekend. Basically, as much as he'd have me, I'd go and got to know his staff and him, incredibly well. And it was pretty much COVID that killed that off because obviously he shut the salon shut and he then
Yeah.
shut his salon and went back to France. So it was a natural, but he was the one really. Then, the follow up of that is he was the one that turned around to me and said, like, look, mate, obviously shut the salon, da da da. So, I'm going to be in France. It's obviously difficult for us to link up every week and do stuff like we are. So, what you thinking? And he said, well, look, I could refer you to Seiko. That's the best people left in the UK, in my opinion. That
Yeah.
we could get you front of. Is he said, let me speak to Richard and see if we can get you put in front of Seiko. And then that was how the Seiko thing developed for me because I was looking for my next person in the UK to be able to work with. And I'll be forever grateful to JB for his, mentorship and how he helped me because he didn't just leave me hanging either. He left me and amongst all of his hardship of the salon shut down and all that going on, he still managed to take the time to set me up and get me sorted. And like I said, we're still, I still speak to him now. He's been an ongoing kind of piece really. For no real gain of his own, I must admit, and that's why I'm forever grateful because he doesn't really get anything out of me now with us not really seeing each other very much. But
Yeah.
he's always there to offer a word of advice. And obviously these, you meet very few people like this, don't you, in your life? And
Yeah.
he's obviously one of them that I'll always be grateful for. But yeah, and then naturally that was where the Seiko thing picked up then. So from that, the Seiko kind of partnership and me working with Richard was born, and that probably again that went on, and that I don't know. Well, it's been about three. That would have been about probably in total 3 years worth, maybe of being with the Seiko guys.
Yeah.
And yeah, but effectively, I managed to just through consistency and turning up and helping them, and basically managed to become like Richard's assistant for a couple of years, really, and until that all kind of finish really. So yeah, it's just the journey has a funny way, doesn't it, of continuing and working out. And when I shut the salon ultimately, because that was where that kind of ended, I suppose, really. So that was the post-COVID. So when would it have been? I think we shut the salon about 2 years ago now, it must have been. So
Yeah.
that was basically where you know
That all
that
picked up
finished.
from.
And yeah, and that was where like more of my education kind of started and was formed for me doing my own stuff on my own way, more
Yeah.
using all the stuff that I'd learned over the years. And consistently throughout all of this, I've been exposed to education. So people have either let me teach on their behalf, or I've just had, education inquiries and done it myself. So it initially started when I was working with JB. I became a Goldwell and KMS guest artist, so I could offer education for them. And then obviously then that went through, and then I got picked up by L'Oreal, so I started working with Matrix, and that kind of happened during the Seiko turnover when I working with Seiko. became an artist then for Matrix. And yeah, it's just constantly. So I've always been developing my platform and me doing it and working like that, and always done it privately, but then with other companies and like learning my philosophy, learning my way. I mean, these great hairdressers. I look at JB and Richard, and they're great hairdressers that have installed great fundamentals and great skills and philosophy into my work and now that's led me on to my kind of next mentorship now where I'm lucky enough to be being mentored by Gianni Samacci. So he's the next man in the hot seat, really. So and
Yeah.
that again, that kind of organic. When I shut the salon and the Seiko ties were cut naturally, just because I didn't have the shop anymore. And like we said before, then Richard went on to Sassoon, didn't he? So then my UK link was no longer there. And they've since shut the academy, so that kind of all fizzled out as I shut the shop. And I was like, well, I'm not, again, I'm not ready. I need more. I need to be better. I want to be better. And the only other, in my opinion, one of the best haircutters in the world, aside from JB, really, is Gianni, to be honest. And he's someone I've always linked up with on socials, met him a couple of times at events, and always thought like he's amazing. Like the one piece of my work that I don't have yet is what he offers. I've been fortunate enough to learn really great foundations from Seiko and M&P and the guys like that, and built me to the position where I'm at now, where again, you're ready for the next step, really. So about a year ago, I started working with Gianni, and that's where we are, with that education front now. So I see him, 4 or 5 times a year, and I'm on a personal program, so it's like a educate the educator sort of thing. So he's developing my skills of teaching and also what I know, haircutting in the salon. And honestly, it's like when you stand next to someone of that level of greatness, mate, it's like jaw dropping every time because it's just amazing, isn't it, what he does? So it's
Yeah,
like
exactly. I
it's
mean,
just great,
going back to what you said earlier, though, it's like just keep turning up and basically turn up to the opening of an envelope,
Yeah. Well,
and
and that
it
yeah, and
helps,
that
doesn't it? It
is
gets you out there. I mean,
yeah,
it's how I got on in my career as well. It's
yeah.
just I didn't say no. You
Yeah,
know,
and I think that is probably one of the important messages you can take from it, isn't it? Is
yeah,
consistency for me is key because consistency is longevity. And that's one of the things I'll say that with life, I say that with career. If you're consistently at a certain level, it prevails. I don't care about trends, being with famous people, all this sort of thing that does all that. The consistency ultimately is what long term will you'll be known for. And that right now where I'm sat is what I've worked so hard to get to where I'm at right now, and I plan on doing that for the years to come. It's so that I'm consistently there of being, the best haircutter in the UK. That's the level you want to be known at and continue through. So yeah, if that was a message, that's what you would promote. But it's also getting yourself out there, isn't it, mate? Because it's
yeah,
like you've got to be you unfortunately, you have to be a bit uncomfortable at times. You have to be seen at stuff you don't want to be seen at. You might have to, have a few uncomfortable conversations with people you don't know, but that's the whole idea, isn't it? It's you've got to push yourself out there. Social media, on the other hand, is like another example, isn't it? You can have a virtual profile now that maybe you probably had when I was starting out as an educator, but it's certainly way more prevalent now. Unfortunately, brands do look at that.
yeah,
And we've obviously said this between us before, haven't we? But unfortunately, I do think that becomes a big part.
yeah,
I'd say that in a 50-50 sense of quality, really, more than anything else. Anyone can look good on social media. You can have thousands, if not millions, of followers. But I'm not really sure what that means. I mean, if that buys you tickets and gets you sponsorships and things like that, then fair enough, it's great, isn't it? But that's not necessarily the fact. If I have a million followers and I put an event ticket out that a million people are turning up to my event to cut hair, that's where I don't know where the relevance is, but I'm sure it's
yeah,
great for overall press, and things like that. But I think you've just got to be true to yourself, haven't you? I think you've got to have an identity and be true to yourself. And that's with my consistency piece, it's probably where I sit myself in terms of, I always make an effort to what I wear to work. I make an effort of how I speak to people, how I treat people. I treat them how I would want to be treated, as no one below me. Doesn't matter that I'm leading the class, I'll sweep up the class. It's all this sort
yeah,
of thing. I think that really comes back to who you are as a person, probably. And actually, if I was to say anything about things like that, I'd say that particularly working with people like JB, and the two people being JB and Gianni, they're both incredibly honorable men, and they're very, in the way they are in life is how they are in their career. There's no separate, there's no facade, there's no falseness. There's no ego. Of course, everyone has an ego, but they haven't got temperamental egos that are, that they're trying to protect at all costs. They're just
Yeah.
they're great people. But chances are I'll probably meet that many people in my life, in my career, that I could trust like that. And that's just the way it is, isn't it? That's just people,
Absolutely.
that's just life.
Well, it's like you say, there is the presentation side. This is where I fall foul with social media in terms of the hairdressing. It's like you said, the two you mentioned there, Gianni, JB,
Yeah.
classy people.
Yeah.
And yourself, Richard as well. All of these people is that they dress well, they act well. They don't do the industry down. They're there to be haircutters. They're there to be hairdressers. There to
Yeah.
show you what can be done at a very high level.
Yeah.
And that's where I fall foul with hairdressing, and the social media is the ones who are sort of trying to be a bit more of a comedian rather than a hairdresser.
Yeah,
You know,
and
it's
that's for likes and views, and
yeah,
you
exactly.
understand, you can see why people do it, but unfortunately, with that, there's no longevity, is there? It's the flavor of the month piece, isn't it? I think the biggest thing. I mean, again, the UK industry, haven't been here, but you also now you're the US industry, which again is comparable in senses. But I think the one thing to really make a point on is the fact that the lack of standardization and registration in this country. I think for me, the fact now I work with a company in the UK now that are all about standardization. So they work with the Hair and Barber Council, and they're doing great. They're doing great work at like really trying to standardize education, particularly. But it's just the fact that you can just open a shop, be anyone with money, open a shop, start cutting hair with no license, no qualifications. You can get insurance. You could basically do anything of any standard of any level, in your shop and get away with it. And I think it does the industry itself down. I think what people don't realize is if people unite together as an industry and stop being, of course, you have to park your ego for this to happen, but if you can club together, you can elevate the industry together. But you have to be prepared to put your own ego aside to maybe be that it's not going to be the you show, it's going to be the together
The
show.
industry,
And
exactly it.
you know, and this is the thing. If we lift the industry, what people don't understand is you eliminate that bottom channel of 10 to 20 pound haircuts, because you can't compete with that. Whether it's a front, whether it's a cash thing, whether it's a whatever, it's like the clients that are going in don't know that.
Yeah,
You're trusting the clients just to know that you're better than them. But some people will, if the cheaper option's available, they'll go cheaper because they think, why not? But there's always the argument that, well, that's not your client, but don't give them a choice. If we all elevated together, there'd be a minimum fee for a haircut in the UK. There'd be a minimum fee for color.
yeah,
Well, look at the prices and the respect and the standardization. It would just rise through the roof straight away, just with actions like that. But it's like, I think too many people and probably too many big companies as well are to blame with being too short-sighted to be able to go right, like let's club together for this thing because we're going to all benefit in the long run. We're going to sell more product. We're going to be better off financially. We're going to, education as a piece. Every man and his dog is an educator now.
yeah,
And look, and fair enough, because Instagram's probably been able to do that for you. And I'll always say, look, anyone trying to make a living, fair enough to them. Like you're prepared to go out and make a living. But the problem is that it shouldn't be as easy as that to become an educator. There should be box to tick. Like, I've got my teaching qualification as an example.
yeah,
I work the most of the educators I've probably worked with and been in like places like L'Oreal and all the big brands. I bet none of them do. None of them have the
yeah,
ticket. And it's like, well, the brands blame as much as the individual, but why would you not? Because you're trying to elevate your standard. Now we've spoken about people like your, Gianni's and JB. Now they're like the best haircutters in the world, but they've earned that level. They've got to that
yeah,
level. It's a case of, they would be master stylists, wouldn't they? But
yeah,
everyone else below that's doing the courses because they want to get a quick buck and a quick promotion. It's such a tricky one, but I only really see the kind of unity is anything changing it really. And of course the UK isn't registered. So until that like law gets changed and it gets passed that actually, that's a minimum standard in this country, you probably can't really say much else changing, can
yeah.
you
I,
really,
I think you've
unfortunately?
you've you've hit the nail on the head there with that, with the unity and the thing. The thing is, we are a very individualistic business as an
Mm.
industry, hairdressing.
Yeah.
Because we are. little individual shops. There's a few chains. I mean, I was speaking to someone the other day about this, and it happens. How many big chains are there left? And I'm talking chains. I know. Let's call McDonald's as a sort of an equivocal.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah,
there's none, is there? You know, and if you start to
yeah,
look at the UK high street, I know that
yeah,
the big chains that once occupied them are no longer the big
yeah.
chains that they were. And it's
No,
as you say, I'm all in favour of what you say. If we all sit down together and say we can push the boat
yeah,
up the river here, you know,
yeah.
we could get stuff done. But I think the trouble is it's far too fragmented, you know, and
Mm,
unfortunately, I wish I could, but I can't see a way that we're ever going to be able to do it.
no.
You know,
No, and I
it's
think that, and probably, that's the flaw, isn't it, to
yeah,
social media. If you were to, we sing its praises and look, it's great. I've been able to connect with you. I've done a live view on the platform,
yeah,
probably all through social media. Amazing because it's educational. It's I was able to help people in the States and show them a haircut that I would teach in a class. Like amazing. They might not have seen that before. Great use of social media, but it's the flip side, isn't it? It's the cons with the pros and it is a tricky one, but I mean, maybe that is an example of something that could be used to elevate it as well. At the end of the day, you need leaders, don't you? In any
right,
walk of life of stuff like this, you need someone to fly the flag, be the leader. The company I'm working with in the UK to do it are doing. They're called We Love, and they're the only company in the UK that offer accredited CPD education. So I'm running their cutting courses for them at the minute. So they brought
yeah,
me in to do that, but you have to be state registered. You have to have certain qualifications to be able to teach for them. They're supported by H.A.T.A.E and the Hair and Barber Council. So it's all like very like rubber stamp, rubber stamp, rubber stamp. But they're doing that because they want to show and highlight that actually we're the only ones in this whole country that like it. How many academies do you know, mate? How many academies do you see up and down the country that
yeah,
someone opens on Instagram? But it's like this is the thing, isn't it? This is one that are doing it, a very different way. And I, fair play to them because I think it's amazing. I'm very pleased to be a part of that. But you need that all over the country, don't you? You need that to be a standard of actually you can't open a train. It's a bit like a college, mate. Let's be
yeah,
honest. Everyone says their piece about hairdressing college, standards and how that is, but they have to get what was it 40 hours 30 hours CPD a year for the educators,
yeah,
so the tutors on them courses they have to show that they've been on courses that are accredited. I mean, most salons don't even do that, so
yeah,
it's things like that, isn't it? This is where we should all be singing from the same hymn sheet of it. I mean, where it will go I don't know, mate, but it's certainly, I think it's something that if you're listening to the podcast, it's definitely something you should look at. I'm able to offer CPD education myself. So my programs are, come rubber stamped and they've been certified, and I work with companies that do so. So it's maybe looking at companies like that and sourcing your education slightly differently. If you're unsure because you're trying to go through this minefield of education of who's any good, it's like, well, maybe start looking at things like who offers CPD, actual
yeah,
accredited CPD, who isn't just offering brand training where they're trying to sell you a product, who's looking for quality. I mean, my whole philosophy that I've managed to develop over time is all about beauty first. So it's all about natural beauty. So my whole thing is I create beautiful wearable hair. So each person I work with, whether it's training, client, anything, it's all about how can I enhance the natural beauty in that client and how can I create a style that's going to be wearable and elegant or wearable and masculine for a guy, if a great haircut that has shape but suitable to them. And it all comes back to suitability. You're looking at suitability, you're looking at technique and shape, the key things and that's like my whole foundation of my education platforms built across that. It's about elegance and beauty, and you can see it, and you can see it, through pictures, you can see it through things like that. But ultimately, that's what you need to look at as your, you know, difference, your point of sale, isn't it? Is like, what do you offer different to someone else? Well, not many people even have a philosophy. It might all just be technique, and that's where the different gradients and the levels of education work. I look at someone like Johnny, he creates a haircut so bespoke even on a doll's head, and it's like it's the hair he creates is beautiful. It's elegant. There's a finish to it because there's a feel. And the one thing, we've been working on is the feel from the heart and the eyes. So, what I've been trying to really develop with my on my own journey is not just looking at things technically with my brain, but with my eyes and my heart. And and it's the follow up of looking at it and so, when you look at a haircut and you go, it doesn't look right, but technically you've executed it with every inch of its life and it's great, but it doesn't suit them. And why is that? Well, because you've got the feel in here and you've got your eyes, haven't you, to be
Yeah.
like, there's something I need to manipulate a bit different, the finish, and that's like the layers I'm talking about of education of these guys. It's like levels and levels above, in it, and that's where you want to get to, in it. You want to constantly develop.
Yeah.
If you've got a spare 500 quid, that's what you want to be spending it on. It's that kind of thing, isn't it?
No,
It's yeah.
absolutely. So what are you up to now then, Luke? So we've gone through the G, you've gone through that, you've done your
Yeah.
mentorship. So what are you up to now?
Well, I've had a career, mate, so I was thinking about retiring, really, to be honest.
Yeah,
But
why not, mate? I
yeah,
thought about it. Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no. So now so post salon ownership era, I work. So I've actually relocated. So I used to be in the south of the country. So I used to work in Oxfordshire, which obviously great links to London. I'm now up north, so I'm up in Manchester. So I'm living in Cheshire, but obviously with strong links to the north of the country now. So yeah, I'm just working. So I work in a salon in a place called Knutsford in Cheshire. So I rent a chair there a couple of days a week to offer like behind the chair services. So like cut all my cutting services and things like that are all done from there. And then I'm working in a barber shop as well. So I do a day or two a week in a barber shop. So I'm helping someone I've recently joined up forces with and helping them develop their barber shop and work with them and offering barbering skills as well. I think for me as an educator, it's really important to be in shop as well as teaching. I mean, obviously my main thing really long term is the education business and to be busy with that and doing international travel and pulling all that together. But I'll always work in a salon or a barber shop because I think it keeps you grounded and it keeps you working with the general public, doesn't it? It keeps you working on refining your skills and actually deploying what you teach and what you teach, actually putting it into practice yourself. Like exactly how I teach is how I work in the shop. Is it? You could follow me from day to day and you'd see that what I taught you yesterday is what I'm doing the next day in the shop. And I think that's really important to flow, even if it's just part-time in the shop. That balance and flow of everything is great. So I'm at a really good position now actually where I've managed to break up my week. So I'll give myself 2 to 3 days available for education booking, and then I do 3 to 4 days in barbershop and salon, and that balance of the week seems to work perfectly for me, to be honest. And yeah, like always building links with new people. I'm obviously still on my program with Gianni, so now that's an ever growing program. Now the plan is to hopefully do some education with him as well, where I can teach alongside him, and we're going through the journey with that, which is amazing. But yeah, the links now coming in seem to be slightly more international, which is great. So there's probably going to be some more, more plane trips, more teaching abroad. Obviously, we've spoken ourselves, haven't we, about maybe doing something in the States, which is
Yeah.
good. I've got a
Hopefully we'll get something going.
few other things in the pipeline as well, which are great with travel, Europe and maybe out to the UAE and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm very much an open book in that sense. But I'm trying to use, if I can now, it's like the skills I've got from where I've ran a business and spent all the money and kind of all of that. I'm trying to use that now and package that together and offer that to other businesses as well, where I can come in and not only just look at your training and upskilling you for your, ladies and gents haircutting, but also help elevate your services. How can you elevate the salon? How can you elevate the barbershop, working with people on like a one-to-one level of, transforming their business? So recently I've been working with a young barber as well, where he's got his own studio and I've been just doing one-to-one sessions with him every couple of months, but helping him like set up his business as well so that he's charging the right money, so that he's, not burning out and all this sort of thing that I've learned the hard way myself, and I use that experience to bring people forward. So I'm trying to cover like a few different bases really, and the Luke Robert Air education platform now itself is basically for that. It's to go into salons, elevate standards within salons, elevate the business, work with them on that front. I've been very, very fortunate enough to work with some amazing hairdressers and barbers. And one of them, I'm not sure if you'd have known him, but an ex Sassoon, a guy called Dale Ted Watkins, is
I
one of
know
my
of Dale,
he
yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
Dale. So he played a big part in my journey as well as one of my mentors in terms of the period of going out on our own in the salon. He came in and I basically had him as a like 6, 7 times a year he'd come and do education for me. So my men's work is as strong as my women's because of someone like him, and he's
Yeah.
probably, in my opinion, Dale's the best barber in the country without question. I mean, he's unbelievable, but he's Dale's a bit more of like he works in the darkness a bit more, Dale. So
Yeah.
he's supported a lot of really big names over the years, but he never, because of his own ego, he obviously doesn't need to be the front man, it's that sort of thing. But he's, the stuff I've done with him with barbering and men's stuff, and we even got to do a couple of shows together, which is amazing because that's where it's great to be able to get to that point with your mentors and your idols where you can actually work alongside them and do a few things. But yeah, so with that front, I mean, I feel like I can go into any business, barbershop, salon now and elevate them from that level. And I suppose the assurances I give to people is the fact I'm always developing myself, and it's the Luke you got last month will be better next month. If you get him to come back next year, it'd be even better, and it's
Yeah.
I think I feel there's a bit of like reassurance in that as well, because you're not stagnant, are you then? And you're developing. And but like you said, mate, earlier on, I'm very much an open book in the sense of I very rarely say no to opportunity. I speak to people, I sound things out, I'll always see what could be next, because there's always something on the horizon. We don't know what that is right now, but I'm always full of optimism in that sense. I don't know where the rest of it will go, but I've got a few things I want to do, like a bit more international education and things like that. And who knows, there might be academies down the line, there might be all sorts, but you leave it as a bit of an open book, don't you, mate, really?
Absolutely, absolutely. And where can people get in touch with you then, Luke, if they want to inquire about an education course, just want to get in touch with you, follow your work? How will people get in touch with you?
So, I mean, obviously, as we said earlier on, the push point to social media is obviously I have it myself as well. So, Luke Robert Hare. So, Luke Robert underscore Hare. If that comes up on your Instagram, that's me. Luke Robert on Facebook, or Luke Robert Hare on Instagram. So that would be my best point to active work. I have my website, which I direct everyone to, which is lukeroberthare.com. And that's for all clients, that's for all your education. I have packages on there available for people to buy for education. I do conference calls if people want to sit and have a chat like we are today, and tell me what it is that maybe I could offer you, or what you're in need of help with, and all those kind of things really. But yeah, website, Instagram, Facebook, and we tend to go through like that really. I've just had a new website all completed, so it's all really up to date with where I am, where you can see me, and also all the education platforms and little chat boxes are in there and stuff like that.
Perfect. So I'll drop that all in the show notes so people
Yeah,
can get hold of that. It's been a pleasure talking to you today, Luke. Thank
yeah.
you very much for coming on. And
Thanks,
we'll
mate.
no
Thanks for
doubt
having
be
me.
doing some stuff in the near future.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Ben. Cheers,
Thank you
mate.
very much, mate.